The fire crackles in the cold stone tower. A young girl kneels before the spinning wheel, her fingers trembling, her tears glinting in the dim light. Outside, the guards are laughing. Inside, she's praying. Then, she hears it. A rasping voice behind her. A shape that shouldn't exist, too small, too crooked, and smiling far too wide. "I can help you," it whispers. "But every miracle needs a price. You think you know this story. You think it ends with a name guessed and a demon destroyed. But you've only heard the version safe enough for children. The truth is far older and far darker. Rumpelstiltskin wasn't a mischievous imp. He was a collector, a shadow bound to an ancient law of exchange, taking what's most precious when desperate humans dare to bargain with the impossible. Some say he was the last of the Fey gods. Others say he was the devil's accountant. But the oldest tales call him something far worse. A spirit who feeds on promises, who grows stronger each time we lie, cheat, or betray. And his name? It was never meant to be spoken aloud. Tonight we uncover the horrifying truth behind Rumpelstiltskin's wicked deal. A story that proves some bargains don't just cost your soul, they collect it. Long ago, in a village where the wind whispered through empty streets and the hearths burned low, there lived a poor miller and his daughter. Their home was small, walls thin, the smell of flour clinging to every corner. Yet the miller, ambitious and reckless, saw an opportunity where none existed. He told the king a lie so bold it shimmered with danger. His daughter could spin straw into gold. The claim was absurd, impossible, but the king's eyes gleamed with greed. He summoned the girl to his towering castle, a place of cold stone and echoing halls. The doors slammed behind her, leaving her trapped in a room stacked high with straw. The king's command was simple, but cruel. Spin the straw into gold. By morning, or die. Terror gripped her heart. She had never touched a spinning wheel, never held thread, and now her life hung in the balance. Tears blurred her vision as she sank to the floor, staring at the heap of straw as if it might answer her silent plea. And then, just before midnight, the air shifted. The door creaked, the shadows lengthened, and a strange little man appeared. His eyes gleamed unnaturally, his smile sharp and knowing. He offered help, but at a price. First her necklace, then her ring. Each night, the straw became gold. Each morning, the king demanded more. The fear never left her. The little man never revealed his true name. On the third night, with nothing left to give, he made a terrible offer. One last night of spinning in exchange for her firstborn child. Desperation won over reason, and she agreed. By dawn, the king was pleased beyond measure. He took her as his queen, and life seemed to breathe again. But the bargain was not forgotten. A year passed, and the child was born. Happiness filled the castle, yet a shadow waited. The little man returned, his demand unyielding. She offered wealth, lands, even her throne, but he shook his head. "Something living is dearer to me than all treasures," he said. And then, in a whisper that would echo across millennia, he left her with a challenge. "Guess my name, and you may keep your child." Names, the ancients believed, are more than words. They are keys, locks, and power itself. To speak one aloud is to command the essence of a being. That night, as the girl sent messengers across the land, she unknowingly stepped into a story older than kingdoms, older than writing, older than memory itself. A story of magic, sacrifice, and the terrifying power of a name. Every whisper of the wind outside the castle walls seemed to hint at the truth. Some tales are not mere stories. Some are echoes of a time when the divine and the mortal walked too close, and the price of help was always steep. The girl awoke to the cold light of dawn, the castle silent, but for the distant clatter of guards and the echoing drip of water in the stone corridors. Straw lay in piles around her, unchanged, and yet a faint shimmer lingered in the air, a promise of something impossible. She had survived the first night, but the memory of the little man haunted her thoughts. Who was he? What did he truly want? That evening, as the castle grew dim and the torches flickered with uneasy shadows, the door creaked once more. There he stood, smaller than a man but taller than a shadow, his eyes glinting like molten metal. The air shifted, carrying the faint scent of smoke and something far older, an odor that seemed to seep from memory itself. "I can help you," he said, his voice soft but sharp, like steel against stone. "But everything comes at a price." The girl trembled. She had nothing left to give, yet the heap of straw seemed to whisper its own desperate plea, "Spin it or perish." She handed over her necklace, a token of her life, and watched as the little man turned it into gold, the air ringing with the metallic song of transformation. Night after night, he returned. Her rings, her earrings, even the golden coins she had secretly hoarded, all disappeared into his hands. Each morning, the king's grin widened, his greed insatiable. And each night, the little man's true intent remained hidden, cloaked in shadows and riddles. On the third night, when the girl had emptied all she possessed, he leaned close, his small frame vibrating with a strange, otherworldly energy. "One final task," he said, "and the cost is unlike any before. Your firstborn child, when it comes to life, will be mine." Horror froze her tongue. She shook her head, words failing, tears hot on her cheeks. Yet even in her fear, she sensed a strange inevitability. The little man was not merely a trickster. He was something older, something that had seen empires rise and fall, something that understood the weight of bargains beyond mortal comprehension. By morning, the straw had turned to gold once more, and the king marveled, oblivious to the terror behind the shimmer. The girl, now queen, carried a secret heavier than any crown. In the quiet of her chamber, she whispered to the empty walls, trying to call forth a solution, any thread of hope. But the little man's shadow lingered, patient and eternal, waiting for the moment when the bargain would demand its toll. And in that waiting, a truth began to crystallize. He did not desire wealth, nor power, nor thrones. What he sought was far more precious, far more human, life itself. And yet, there was a way to outwit him, a secret as old as memory, as profound as magic. The power of a name. Names, the ancients said, hold the essence of being. Speak it aloud, and you touch the core of a soul, bending reality to your will. Fail, and all is lost. That night, as the castle held its breath, the girl began her search. A name could save her child, if only she could uncover it before the bargain claimed its due. The castle at night was a place of whispers. Shadows stretched long across the stone floors, and the wind moaned through the narrow windows like the voices of the forgotten. The girl, now queen, could hear the echoes of her own heartbeat pounding in the quiet. Her child slept peacefully, unaware of the bargain that loomed like a storm overhead. But she could not rest. The little man's words haunted her. "Your firstborn will be mine." Desperate, she sent messengers far and wide, riders with cloaks dark as midnight, tasked with finding any trace of the mysterious being who had stolen so much from her. "Who is he?" she asked each messenger. "What is his name?" But each returned with only rumors and fleeting glimpses, vague descriptions of a small figure, a man too strange for memory, dancing in the firelight, laughing with a sound that scraped the soul. In the stillness of the castle, she began to piece together what she had learned. The little man was more than a creature of flesh. His presence was ancient, elemental, imbued with knowledge of things humans had long forgotten. The spinning of straw into gold, the bargains, the obsession with life itself, these were not mere tricks. They were echoes of a time when mortals and the divine walked closer together, when fire and metal, word and will held powers beyond comprehension. She thought of the legends she had heard from wandering storytellers. In lands far beyond her own, it was said that knowing a being's true name gave one control over it, a key to the essence of existence. Kings and priests, mystics and magicians, all believed in this power. A name was not a word, it was a code, a map of life itself. To speak it was to hold a spark of creation. That night, she crept to the window of her chamber and gazed at the darkened woods beyond. Somewhere there, she knew, the little man danced, perhaps around a fire, perhaps singing some ancient song in a tongue that humans had long forgotten. The girl remembered the faint melody she had glimpsed when he worked words that seemed to pulse with life, syllables that made the air itself shimmer, a riddle, a song, a key. Her thoughts circled like the threads on a spindle, weaving patterns of hope and fear. She realized that the answer was not in gold, nor in wealth, nor even in cleverness. It was in listening, in observing, in finding the truth hidden in shadows and song. The little man had revealed it, even if he did not know it himself. As the fire crackled in the hearth, she felt the weight of destiny press down upon her. The firstborn child, the bargain, the secret name, it was all connected. Somewhere in the darkness of the woods, in the flicker of a flame, lay the key to outwitting him, and if she failed, all would be lost. The night deepened, the castle seemed to hold its breath, and in the distance, carried on the wind, there came a faint, curious song, a dance of words she could not yet understand. But somehow, she knew she would. Somehow, she would uncover the name that could bend fate itself, and with it, she could save her child or lose everything. Before dawn, a messenger rode through the thick forest, his horse's hooves muffled by the damp earth and fallen leaves. Mist clung to the trees like ghostly fingers, and the wind whispered secrets that seemed older than time itself. He had been sent by the queen, a desperate plea to uncover the name of the little man who had taken everything. Fear rode beside him, heavy as armor, but so did determination. Failure was unthinkable. The deeper he went, the stranger the woods became. Shadows twisted unnaturally, branches arched like skeletal arms, and the cries of nocturnal creatures echoed as if carrying messages. Then, through a break in the trees, he saw it. A fire, its flames dancing higher than nature should allow, shimmering gold and crimson against the darkness. Around it, a small figure moved, smaller than a man, yet larger than a shadow. He sang in a voice both melodic and jarring, a rhythm that seemed to weave through the very air. The messenger froze, unsure if he should approach or flee. And yet, every instinct whispered that this was the answer he sought. The little man's chant carried words that made the leaves shiver. Today I'll bake, tomorrow I'll brew, then I'll fetch the queen's new child too. The words repeated like a riddle, a pattern, a key hidden in plain sight. And then, a name slipped into the night, Rumpelstiltskin. The messenger's heart thundered. He repeated the name under his breath, tasting it, letting it echo against the bones of the forest. It was strange, alien, unlike anything he had ever spoken. Yet it resonated with a curious power, a sense of authority over the being whose song had filled the night. Carefully, he memorized every syllable, feeling the weight of destiny pressing upon him. But the little man was not merely a figure of wood and shadow. He sensed the eyes upon him. His head snapped toward the trees, and the flames seemed to bend and twist, following his gaze. The messenger crouched behind a moss-covered rock, holding his breath, heart pounding so violently he feared it would betray him. For a moment, the world seemed suspended. The little man danced around the fire, oblivious, chanting the same strange cyclical song, unaware that the secret of his power was being stolen. And then, as if satisfied by the rhythm of the night, he vanished. No trace remained, except the fire's dying embers and the echo of a name that would change the course of fate. The messenger mounted his horse with trembling hands, the precious secret pressed against his mind. He rode with haste, shadows chasing him, the forest whispering in languages lost to men. Every branch seemed to stretch, every owl to watch, yet he did not stop. He carried the key, the weapon, the lifeline the queen needed to save her child. By the time dawn broke over the castle, the messenger had returned. The queen's eyes widened as he spoke the name aloud, the syllables heavy with power, Rumpelstiltskin. In that instant, the impossible became possible. The little man's spell, ancient and dark, had a vulnerability, a single point of failure, hidden in plain sight for centuries. And so, the first step toward salvation had begun. The queen now held the knowledge that could undo the bargain, confront the shadow, and reclaim her child. But the little man was patient. He waited, cunning and eternal, for the moment when the queen would dare speak the name aloud. And that moment, she knew, could decide the fate of generations. The queen's hands shook as she held the secret name in her mind, the syllables tasting strange on her tongue. Rumpelstiltskin. It was a word that carried weight, that hummed with a hidden force. She knew that speaking it aloud could undo the quote, little man's power. But she also knew the danger. He was no ordinary being. He was ancient, cunning, and inhuman. To confront him was to challenge something older than kingdoms, older than memory. That night, the air in the castle felt thicker, heavier. Torches flickered as if in warning, and the walls themselves seemed to lean in closer, listening. The little man appeared, small and sharp-eyed, his smile like a glint of metal in the dark. "Well, my queen," he said, voice curling like smoke around the stone. "Have you guessed my name?" The queen's throat tightened. She could feel the tension of centuries in the moment, the echo of countless bargains and countless failures that had come before. Her lips parted, and she spoke the name she had fought so desperately to uncover. Rumpelstiltskin. For a heartbeat, the world held its breath. The little man froze, eyes wide and unblinking. The firelight reflected in them, shimmering with rage, surprise, and something indefinable. Then he screamed a sound that tore through the castle, vibrating in stone, echoing through corridors as if shaking the foundations of reality itself. He stamped so hard that the floor seemed to shudder beneath him. Some stories say he sank into the earth, swallowed by his own fury. Others claim he tore himself in two, a final act of defiance against the power of a mere name. Whatever the truth, the queen knew this. The bargain was broken. Her child was safe. The impossible task had been survived. The ancient secret unraveled through understanding and courage. But the victory was not simple. The queen realized that names, like threads, wove through existence itself. To know a name was to touch the essence of a being, to bend reality around a single truth. Rumpelstiltskin's power had been immense, but his name, his identity, his essence, was his vulnerability. The knowledge she now possessed was both weapon and responsibility. In the quiet aftermath, she reflected on the strange little man's purpose. He had never wanted gold, nor kingdoms, nor even revenge. What he sought was life itself, and in that demand lay a mirror of the ancient world. Once, offering the firstborn was a sacred act, a bridge to the divine, a token of humanity's understanding that life was both precious and powerful. By conquering him through knowledge, she had not only saved her child, but had also glimpsed the echo of something far older than fairy tales, an understanding of sacrifice, creation, and the ineffable power of words. Names were more than labels. They were keys, codes, divine instruments. In knowing Rumpelstiltskin's true name, she had accessed a fragment of that ancient, hidden power. The castle returned to silence, yet the shadows lingered. Somewhere, deep in the world beyond human sight, echoes of the little man's song continued. But the queen now knew that even the oldest magic had its weakness, and in that knowledge lay both triumph and warning. Some secrets, once uncovered, can never be forgotten. The queen sat by her chamber window, the first light of dawn brushing the castle walls, but her thoughts were far from peace. The little man was gone, vanished as mysteriously as he had appeared, yet his presence lingered in the echoes of the bargain, in the knowledge she now carried. The spinning of straw into gold, the impossible task, the secret name. These were not mere tricks of a fairy tale. They were symbols, echoes of an ancient understanding of the world. Spinning, she realized, was never just domestic labor. In distant lands and forgotten times, it was the act of shaping reality itself. In Greek myths, the fates sat at their cosmic wheels, spinning the threads of human life, measuring each breath, each heartbeat, each destiny. In the frozen north, the Norse spoke of the Norns, weaving the fates of gods and mortals alike beneath the roots of Yggdrasil, the world tree. Across the ancient Vedic lands, reality itself was Raj, envisioned as a golden tapestry, threads binding heaven and earth, life and death, mortal and divine. And gold was no mere wealth, it was purity, divinity, immortality. To spin straw into gold was not simply to trick the eye, but to transform the mundane into the sacred. It was a metaphor, a ritual, a cosmic act cloaked in story. The little man had been no mere helper. He had been performing work that humans had once understood, long before kingdoms, laws, or even writing. Her mind traced the patterns further, imagining the ancient metalworkers of the Bronze Age. They too had seemed godlike to their contemporaries, shaping copper and tin into bronze, pulling life from stone and fire. The ones who mastered fire, metal, and craft were revered, feared, and remembered in myth. The little man's spinning, she understood, mirrored that cosmic craft, a shaping of matter, of fate, of destiny, all for a price too terrible for ordinary minds to comprehend. She thought of the bargains of old, the offering of firstborn children to gods, the sacrifices in far-off lands, the whispers of priests and mystics who understood that the divine demanded what was most precious. The little man had asked, not for gold, but for life itself. And in that demand, she glimpsed the shadow of humanity's oldest fears, that to seek the divine, one must pay dearly, and that life itself is a fragile thread. The queen's reflection deepened. Stories like this were not idle tales to frighten children. They were memories, echoes of the way humans once understood the universe, a record of cosmic truths disguised as simple narrative. The spinning wheel, the golden thread, the secret name, these were all instruments of understanding, relics of a time when magic and reality were intertwined, when words and deeds could shape existence itself. And somewhere, in the darkness beyond mortal perception, the little man waited, a shadow of that older world, reminding her that some knowledge carries weight beyond imagination. The queen's child slept soundly, unaware of the cosmic web woven around them. But she knew that the story was far from over. For in understanding Rumpelstiltskin, she had glimpsed a truth. Some tales endure because they remember more than history. They remember power, magic, and the fragile, precious threads of life itself. And in that memory, the world quietly trembled, waiting for the next chapter to unfold. Long before castles, before kings and queens, before written stories passed from hand to hand, there were those who walked in fire and shadow. The first metal workers, the makers of bronze, were revered and feared in equal measure. To shape copper and tin into a new shining metal was to touch something divine. They were the firebringers, the keepers of secrets that humans barely understood, and the little man in the queen's story was their echo. Imagine a village in the Bronze Age. Smoke curls from the forges, sparks dancing like fleeting stars. A stranger appears, cloaked in soot, hands glowing from the heat of molten metal. To the villagers, he is no ordinary man. He commands fire, bends metal, shapes life itself. His tools are not just instruments, they are extensions of his will. When he leaves, he vanishes into legend, a memory etched in fear and awe. These firebringers were often associated with gods or spirits. In Sumeria, Kothar wa Kasas built temples for the gods, shaping divine spaces with hands that seemed to channel otherworldly knowledge. Among the Hittites, Hameli worked behind veils of smoke and flame, crafting sacred tools and weapons. In Norse myth, dwarves carved Thor's hammer deep underground, each strike of the forge echoing cosmic significance. And among the Slavs, Svarog, the god of fire and creation, was said to teach humans the arts of metal, of craft, of sacred knowledge. The parallels are uncanny. The little man's strange skill, his magical transformation of straw into gold, his obsession with the most precious of things, these were not random. They were memories, distorted over millennia, of a time when humans witnessed divine power in mortal hands. To spin gold from straw, to shape the impossible from the ordinary, to demand a terrible price. These were the hallmarks of beings who commanded fire, matter, and fate. And the price he demanded was no accident. The firstborn child, the most precious gift a human could offer, was not simply a plot device for a story. In the ancient world, offering the firstborn to the divine was an act of ultimate sacrifice, a bridge to power that mortals barely comprehended. Kings, priests, and common folk alike understood that life itself could be a currency, and those who wielded power, the firebringers, the divine artisans, the mysterious helpers, knew the value of what they asked for. The queen, in her chamber, realized something profound. The little man was not merely a trickster, a fairy tale villain, or a greedy sprite. He was a memory of humanity's first encounters with power beyond mortal reckoning. He carried the echo of fire, of bronze, of secret knowledge that shaped civilizations. He was a shadow of a world long gone, yet still whispering to the present, reminding her that the bargains of old were never truly forgotten. Every thread of straw spun into gold, every coin gleaming in the king's treasury, every terrified gasp of the girl, they were all part of a pattern, a reflection of something far older, a ritual and a memory intertwined. And as she looked at her child sleeping peacefully, she understood the weight of history pressing down, that some stories survive not because they amuse, but because they preserve truths humans are only beginning to remember. The queen could not shake the thought of the little man's name, spoken aloud in the darkness of the woods and carried by the messenger back to her. Rumpelstiltskin. A strange, alien word, yet heavy with ancient weight. Names, she realized, were never just labels. They were vessels of essence, keys to a being's power. To know a true name was to touch the core of existence itself. Across history, the ancients understood this instinctively. In Egypt, pharaohs did not possess a single name. They held secret names, known only to the gods and scribes, carved into tombs and temples to protect the soul. To speak a pharaoh's hidden name was to summon or destroy, to bind or free, to command the divine spark that flowed through their being. A name was life, and to reveal it was both power and risk. In mystical traditions across the world, the same belief echoes. In Kabbalah, the names of God are sacred codes, words that shape reality itself. In Islamic mysticism, to speak the true names of angels and spirits is to command and understand creation. Even in the Bible, Solomon wielded a magical ring, engraved with divine seal, to summon demons. He asked each one a single question: "What is your name?" Once known, he held dominion over them, bending their will to the divine law. The queen understood now why the little man had demanded her firstborn. Life itself was the ultimate currency, the most precious offering to beings who existed on a level beyond mortal comprehension. But even such beings were bound by rules, by patterns older than kings and kingdoms. And those rules included the sacred power of the name. To speak it aloud was to crack the code of reality, to disrupt the unseen order that sustained the supernatural helper. The little man's own name had been his vulnerability. For centuries, perhaps millennia, he had existed beyond comprehension, spinning, bargaining, demanding, surviving by obscurity. But every being, no matter how ancient or cunning, carries a secret that can undo them. Knowledge, wisdom, perception. These are the tools that humans have always wielded against the impossible. As she held the secret close, the queen felt the weight of history pressing against her mind. To confront the little man was not merely an act of courage, it was an engagement with a cosmic principle. By speaking his name, she did not just defy a fairy tale villain. She tapped into an ancient truth that words themselves can bind, unbind, destroy, and protect. That language is not just a human invention, but a bridge to the divine, a key to the hidden architecture of existence. In that moment, she realized the lesson of the story. Rumpelstiltskin, the spinning wheel, the bargain, the firstborn, they were not mere plot devices. They were memories encoded in narrative, echoes of humanity's earliest encounters with power, with divinity, with life and death. To speak a name was to reclaim agency, to challenge fate itself. to transform fear into salvation. The child slept peacefully, unaware of the ancient forces circling their cradle. But the queen understood. Knowledge is a weapon, and in the right hands, even the oldest magic can be challenged. The secret name was no longer a mystery. It was a key, and she now held it. Even with the name in her mind, the queen could not stop pondering the little man himself. He had not been a man, not truly, but something older, something elemental. His small stature, the eerie gleam in his eyes, the rhythm of his song all hinted at a being who did not belong to the ordinary world. He was a shadow of the divine, a remnant of a time when gods, spirits, and humans walked close enough to touch one another. She thought of the patterns across cultures: firebringers, metalworkers, spirits of creation who demanded offerings beyond mortal reckoning. The little man's obsession with the firstborn child mirrored the sacrifices of the ancient world, acts that today would seem cruel, yet once were sacred. Life itself was the currency of divinity, the ultimate price for impossible assistance. Every bargain, every deal struck under fear and desperation was a reflection of this truth. The spinning wheel itself held a hidden meaning. To spin straw into gold was not merely to transform matter, but to reshape fate. Across myths, spinning threads represented life, destiny, and the cosmos. The fates in Greece wove the threads of human existence. The Norns in Norse lands bound gods and mortals alike with their weaving. In Vedic tradition, the universe was a golden tapestry, each thread linking all of creation. The queen realized the little man's bargain was a ritual, a symbolic act connecting the mortal to the divine. Each coin, each thread, each whispered promise was an echo of ancient understanding. The spinning wheel was a forge, a crucible where life, matter, and destiny were tested, reshaped, and revealed. And the price the child was the ultimate offering, the spark of life that even gods recognized as precious. Yet he was vulnerable. Knowledge was his weakness. While he wielded fire, magic, and power beyond mortal comprehension, he relied on obscurity. His name, his essence, was hidden, and that secrecy was his shield. The queen now held the key. To speak his name was to disrupt the pattern, to reclaim control from an entity who had existed outside ordinary law and human morality. She reflected further on the nature of bargains. In ancient traditions, those who sought divine favor, whether through magic, fire, or metal, understood that nothing was free. The divine always demanded the most precious thing, and the mortals always paid in fear, reverence, or blood. The little man's demands were not random. They were an echo of the sacred structure underlying human belief. As she gazed out at the darkened forest beyond the castle, the queen realized that the story was more than a cautionary tale. It was a living memory of humanity's first encounters with power too vast to comprehend, a record of bargains struck between the mortal and the divine, and a testament to the enduring strength of knowledge. Rumpelstiltskin, or whatever he truly was, had survived for millennia because he understood one principle. The secret of his power lay in hiding, in the unspoken, in the fear that humans could never know. But she had learned, and knowledge, she now knew, could pierce even the oldest shadows. The child slept quietly, unaware of the cosmic forces converging around them. But in the quiet of her chamber, the queen felt the weight of history, of sacrifice, of ancient power, and she understood that by learning the name, she had not only saved her child, she had glimpsed a secret older than kingdoms, older than writing, older even than memory itself. The queen could hardly sleep that night. Though the little man had been bested, the echoes of his existence haunted her thoughts. She began to understand that his story did not begin in her castle, nor in the imagination of the Brothers Grimm, nor even in the villages of medieval Europe. His origins were far older, buried in the dawn of the Bronze Age. 4,000 years ago, the world was waking to fire, metal, and transformation. Humans discovered how to take copper and tin and fuse them into bronze, a new shining substance that could cut, carve, and shape the world. Those who mastered this craft were revered, feared, and considered closer to the divine than ordinary men. They held power over life itself, weapons that could protect or destroy, tools that could build or dismantle, fire that could illuminate or consume. The little man was no mere memory of a trickster. He was an echo of these firebringers, these ancient artisans who walked the line between humanity and godhood. Like the metalworkers of Sumeria, Hittites, and Norse legends, he carried knowledge that was forbidden and feared. His spinning wheel mirrored the forge. Straw became gold as copper, and tin became bronze. Transformation itself was his domain. The price he demanded, life itself, was no accident. In a time when mortality was fragile and the divine was tangible, offerings of firstborn children were not cruelty, but a recognition of value. To give the most precious thing was to participate in a ritual older than memory, a bridge between the mortal and the immortal. By demanding the child, he was enacting a pattern embedded in human history. That true power comes with cost, and the sacred cannot be obtained freely. The queen realized the pattern extended beyond mere tales. Across cultures, the beings who shaped the world, dwarves, gods of fire, divine artisans, shared traits. Elusive, small, yet powerful, working in secrecy, demanding respect and tribute, vanishing as mysteriously as they appeared. Rumpelstiltskin, the strange little man who spun straw into gold, was not an invention. He was a vessel, a story preserver, a whisper from the Bronze Age, carrying knowledge of power, fire, and the sacred rules that govern it. Even the method mattered. The spinning, the chant, the rhythm, all were deliberate, ritualistic. In almost every version of the tale, the secret name is revealed through a song, a riddle, a firelight dance. These were not random choices. They mirrored ancient human understanding, that knowledge, rhythm, and speech hold power. Words were creation itself. Speak rightly, and life bends. Speak falsely, and chaos reigns. And that is why the name held dominion. By learning it, the queen had not simply tricked a magical being. She had accessed the principle that underlies all these ancient bargains. Knowledge is a weapon. Awareness is survival. And understanding the true essence of a being or a force gives one leverage over even the oldest powers. She gazed into the flickering candlelight, imagining the fires of bronze forges, the sparks rising into the night sky, the chants of metalworkers long gone. Rumpelstiltskin was not gone. He lived on in memory, in stories, in the secret rhythms of power humans have always sought to grasp. And she understood that to wield a name, to grasp the thread of life, is to touch the ancient, eternal pulse of the be-ins, world itself. The queen, though exhausted, could not escape her thoughts. Rumpelstiltskin's story was not confined to her castle or even to Germanic folklore. Across continents and millennia, similar tales appeared: impossible tasks, supernatural helpers, bargains sealed in secrecy, and names that held extraordinary power. The pattern was unmistakable. Human cultures, though separated by oceans and mountains, seemed to share an understanding of the same cosmic truth. In Africa, tales spoke of spirits who aided villagers in exchange for the most precious offering, often hidden or secret. In Asia, stories described mystical beings, sometimes tiny, sometimes immense, who could transform ordinary objects into treasures, but always demanded a price. In the Americas, indigenous myths included trickster spirits who challenged humans to impossible tasks, often revealing their essence through riddles or names. Everywhere, the pattern was clear: a helper, a task, a price, a secret revealed through knowledge. It was as if humanity had collectively preserved a memory, encoded in narrative, of something too ancient to record in stone or metal. The queen realized that these stories were not merely for entertainment. They were instructional, warnings and guidance layered into allegory. How to confront power that seems beyond comprehension. How to survive when faced with the unknown. How to claim agency through knowledge and understanding. And the core of it all, what had saved her child, was the name. Across cultures, secret names represented essence, identity, and control. To know the name of a being was to understand its nature, its origin, its limitations. It was both a weapon and a shield. The queen thought of Solomon summoning demons with his ring, of Egyptian pharaohs safeguarding their secret names, of mystics invoking the sacred words of the divine. In every case, knowledge of the true name unlocked the hidden architecture of reality. The queen understood now that the story was a bridge between worlds, the mortal and the divine, the human and the supernatural, the known and the unknowable. The little man, spinning straw into gold and demanding her child, was a cipher, a living metaphor for the forces humans once feared and revered, forces whose memory had been preserved through myth. The stories endured because they contained fragments of truth too dangerous to forget. As dawn painted the sky, she contemplated the implications. Humanity's survival had always depended on understanding patterns, observing cycles, learning the hidden truths that govern life and death. Rumpelstiltskin, the spinning, chanting, bargain-making little man, was a reminder that knowledge is the ultimate power, and ignorance the ultimate vulnerability. And so the queen made a silent vow. She would not forget. She would pass the story forward, not as a mere fairy tale, but as a record of something profound. A lesson wrapped in myth, that life, knowledge, and power are threads to be carefully woven, and that even the smallest being can carry a truth that echoes across millennia. In the stillness of the castle, the child slept, unaware of the ancient legacy surrounding them. But the queen, now guardian of the secret name, understood that the story was far from over. The echoes of Rumpelstiltskin and the knowledge he represented would endure, waiting for the next moment, the next challenge, the next human ready to confront the impossible. The queen's thoughts turned once again to the spinning wheel, that humble instrument that had carried so much weight in her tale. Straw into gold, thread into destiny. The act of spinning was far more than domestic labor. Across time and culture, it had been a metaphor, a ritual, a conduit between the mundane and the divine. The wheel itself was a cosmic instrument, turning not just fibers, but fate, life, and the hidden threads of the universe. In Greece, the fates Clotho, Lachesis, and Di, Atropos spun the threads of every human life. Clotho drew the thread from her distaff, Lachesis measured its length, and Atropos cut it at the moment of death. Every life, every destiny, was woven into the greater tapestry of existence, each thread influencing the next, unseen yet inescapable. The spinning wheel of the queen's chamber echoed this ancient symbolism. Her child's life, her kingdom, her choices, they all had threads entwined with forces older than memory. In Norse tradition, the Norns sat beneath Yggdrasil, the world tree, weaving the fates of gods and men alike. Even the immortals were not free from the threads, bound by patterns older than their own consciousness. To spin was to create, to measure, to decide. And the little man, the mysterious Rumpelstiltskin, was, in a sense, a Norn of his own making, shaping destinies with every turn of his wheel, demanding offerings in return for the power he wielded. The queen realized that gold itself was symbolic, not mere treasure. In Vedic texts, the universe is described as a golden tapestry, threads of light binding all things together. Gold represented divinity, purity, and the eternal. To turn straw into gold was to transform the ordinary into the sacred, to elevate the mundane into immortality. The little man's act was an echo of alchemy, not merely as chemistry, but as spiritual transformation, a reshaping of reality itself. Her mind traced connections further. Spinning was also a test of skill, patience, and understanding. It was a lesson encoded in metaphor, that humans, though limited, could influence the threads of their lives through knowledge, courage, and perception. The queen had learned this lesson the hard way. By discovering the little man's name, she had seized control of a thread that seemed beyond her reach, reclaiming destiny itself from the hands of an ancient power. Every culture that revered spinning, weaving, or golden threads had understood this truth instinctively. The act of creation, whether with fibers, fire, or metal, was a mirror of the cosmic order. To master the thread was to understand fate. to confront mortality, to glimpse the divine. And the queen, now aware of the secret name, now aware of the stakes, had done precisely that. In the quiet of the castle, the wheel rested, still and silent. But its presence lingered, a reminder of the patterns of the universe, the cost of divine bargains, and the power of knowledge. The queen knew that spinning was never just spinning. It was creating, shaping, and surviving. It was life, and life was golden. The queen could not forget the bargain, the terrible bargain struck under fear and desperation. The little man had demanded her firstborn, and in that demand lay a lesson older than kingdoms, older than writing. Knowledge and power always come at a price. The cost may be material, spiritual, or moral, but it is never absent. Every culture that told this story understood that truth instinctively, encoding it into myth, legend, and ritual. In ancient civilizations, the ultimate gift was often life itself. Offering the firstborn to the gods was not simply cruelty. It was recognition that what is most precious can bridge the mortal and the divine. In Carthage, evidence of infant burials suggests offerings to Moloch or Baal. In the Bible, Abraham's near sacrifice of Isaac illustrates the same principle. Faith, courage, and understanding demand the ultimate commitment. And in the queen's story, the firstborn was the currency that measured the stakes of cosmic power. But the little man's bargain also carried a hidden key: knowledge. It was not strength, gold, or cunning that could defeat him. It was discovery, perception, understanding. By learning his name, the queen wielded insight as a weapon. Across cultures, secret names held power over beings beyond human comprehension. Solomon commanded demons through the knowledge of their names. Egyptian pharaohs safeguarded hidden names to protect their souls. Knowledge, carefully obtained, can bend fate itself. The queen reflected on the duality of the bargain. On one hand, there was terror, oppression, and the weight of impossible demands. On the other, there was the invitation to perceive, to understand patterns, to learn the rules that govern life, death, and power. Myths like this were not mere cautionary tales. They were survival guides, encoding wisdom that could protect humans from forces larger and older than themselves. And yet, the cost remained. In every version of the story, the little man demanded a life or a firstborn. This mirrored humanity's earliest understanding of sacrifice. To gain something extraordinary, to grasp forbidden knowledge, to touch the divine, one must be willing to offer what is most dear. The queen understood now that this was not punishment, but a cosmic principle. Life and knowledge are intertwined, and one cannot gain mastery without respect for the cost. Even the spinning wheel held a dual meaning. It was creation and trial, reward and challenge. Straw became gold, effort became destiny, risk became revelation. The queen had navigated the threads, balancing fear with courage, despair with cunning. By claiming the little man's name, she honored the rules of the bargain while transcending its threat. In the quiet of her chamber, she realized the depth of the lesson. Knowledge is powerful, but incomplete without awareness of cost. Life is precious, but its value is revealed only through choice and understanding. And the little man Rumpelstiltskin was both a threat and a teacher, a mirror reflecting humanity's oldest fears, hopes, and insights. The queen glanced at her sleeping child, finally understanding that the story had endured for millennia because it carried the truth of human experience, that wisdom is gained through courage, that survival demands attention, and that the most ancient bargains are written not in gold, but in understanding. The queen had begun to see the truth. Rumpelstiltskin was not human. Not fully. His form, small, wiry, uncanny, belied the depth of power he wielded. His voice, a sing-song chant over the spinning wheel, seemed to carry a rhythm older than words, older than memory. He was a being caught between worlds, a shadow of the divine, a remnant of an age when gods, spirits, and humans were not as separate as they would become. Across cultures, Such figures appear repeatedly. In Sumeria, Kothar wa Kasas built temples and divine tools. In Hittite myths, Hameli worked veiled in fire and steam. In Norse lore, dwarves forged Thor's hammer in subterranean forges. And in Slavic myths, Svarog, god of fire and creation, shaped life and destiny with his hands. All shared traits: mastery of creation, elusive forms, speech that conveyed more than ordinary words. They lived at the edges of human comprehension. Rumpelstiltskin mirrored these archetypes. His spinning wheel was not simply a domestic tool, it was a forge of destiny, turning ordinary straw into golden threads that carried cosmic significance. His bargains were not petty greed, they were rituals encoded in memory, demands for offerings that recognized the sacred. And the firstborn? That was the ultimate offering, the spark of life, a token that bridged the mortal and the divine. The queen considered his name, Rumpelstiltskin, strange, alien, almost mechanical. Across cultures, secret names are never ordinary. They are alien to human tongues, deliberately incomprehensible to protect the essence of the being. The names of gods, demons, and spirits are riddles, codes, keys to the soul. By revealing his name, she accessed a power older than kingdoms, older than empires. She did what humans have always done when confronted with the incomprehensible. She learned, she observed, she acted. And yet, despite his power, the little man obeyed rules. He followed patterns, worked within rituals, and respected the process and timed. Power of names. Knowledge was his limitation. Even a being older than memory could be undone by understanding, by perception. The queen realized that the story preserved this lesson across millennia. Beings of immense power, whether divine, demonic, or semi-mythical, are not invincible. Patterns, laws, and knowledge endure longer than strength, fear, or gold. Rumpelstiltskin's inhuman nature also revealed something more disturbing. He was a memory of a time when humans glimpsed forces they could barely comprehend, forces that could shape matter, life, and destiny itself. His bargains, his chants, his spinning, they were echoes of firebringers, metalworkers, and divine artisans who existed at the intersection of fear and reverence. As the queen looked at her child, safe for now, she understood the weight of what she had witnessed. This was not just a story for children. It was a record of human history, preserved in narrative, the intersection of mortal lives and ancient power, the fragile balance of bargains, and the enduring truth that knowledge, curious, courageous, and careful was the most potent weapon of all. The little man may have been defeated, but his shadow lingered. And the queen, now guardian of the secret name, understood that the echoes of beings like him are never truly gone. They are woven into the threads of human memory, waiting for the next thread to unravel. The queen's mind could not escape the deeper meaning of the bargain. Rumpelstiltskin did not seek wealth, power, or fame. His demand for the firstborn child carried a lesson, a ritual, and a warning embedded in human history. Across millennia, life itself had been the ultimate currency, the offering that connected mortals to the divine. Sacrifice was never mindless cruelty. It was recognition of what was most precious and sacred. In the Bronze Age, humans first learned to shape metals from stone and fire. Those who mastered these elements were revered as intermediaries between the ordinary and the divine. Like Rumpelstiltskin, they possessed knowledge others could not comprehend. Their power required respect, their craft demanded offerings, and their creations changed the world. The little man's wheel was a symbol of the same principle: transformation, mastery, and the ultimate cost. Across cultures, the link between life, offering, and understanding is undeniable. In Carthage, the ancient god Moloch received child sacrifices, a practice that horrifies us today, but reflected a belief in the sacredness of life and the necessity of costly offerings to access divine favor. In Abraham's story, God tests faith through the near sacrifice of Isaac. These were not isolated instances, they were echoes of a universal principle. The sacred demands the precious, and the impossible cannot be achieved without risk. The queen considered her own role in the story. Her knowledge, courage, and perception had allowed her to overcome the little man. By discovering his name, she had reclaimed agency in a universe governed by patterns older than kings, older than empires, older than memory itself. The act of speaking his name was not simply cleverness. It was an engagement with the fundamental laws of existence. Names, she realized, are not mere words, they are keys, maps to essence, codes embedded in reality itself. This understanding reframed her perception of power. Rumpelstiltskin was not evil in a conventional sense. He was a keeper of rules, an agent of cosmic balance. His bargains taught that life, knowledge, and understanding are intertwined. To gain one, a cost must be acknowledged, respected, and, if possible, transcended. The child's safety had depended not on strength or gold, but on wisdom, observation, and the courage to uncover truth. Even the spinning wheel, now silent, seemed to pulse with meaning. Each thread, each turn, each chant had carried the weight of cosmic law. Straw transformed into gold, effort into destiny, fear into understanding. The queen realized that these patterns were encoded in human consciousness, preserved in story, song, and ritual across continents. Myths endure because they encode survival strategies, warnings, and cosmic truths, in forms humans can remember and pass on. As she watched her child sleep, the queen understood the lesson of the tale. Power and knowledge are inseparable from responsibility and sacrifice. To understand the world and survive it is not enough to act. One must see, learn, and respect the hidden laws that govern existence. And sometimes, those laws are older than memory, older than humanity itself. The queen's thoughts now turned to the origins of Rumpelstiltskin's power, and she began to see a pattern that stretched far beyond the confines of her castle. He was more than a trickster. He was a memory, a living echo of the firebringers and divine artisans who had shaped the world in its earliest days. These were beings who worked with metal and fire, transforming base matter into tools, weapons, and treasures, commanding awe and fear wherever they appeared. In Sumeria, Kothar Wakasis built temples and crafted divine instruments for the gods, while in Hittite myths, Hameleh labored in veils of fire and steam, unseen by ordinary humans. In Norse legend, dwarves forged Thor's hammer in subterranean forges, wielding knowledge and skill that exceeded mortal comprehension. Among the Slavs, Svarog, god of fire and creation, wielded tools that could shape reality itself. Rumpelstiltskin bore the same hallmarks: elusive, powerful, and operating according to rules humans could barely perceive. His spinning wheel mirrored the forge of these ancient artisans. Straw into gold, base matter into treasure, effort into transformation. His craft was both symbolic and real, a representation of humanity's first encounters with forces beyond understanding. And like the firebringers, he demanded respect, payment, or sacrifice. The firstborn child, the ultimate offering, echoed ancient practices in which the most precious things were given to access knowledge, power, or divine favor. The queen realized that these figures, Rumpelstiltskin, dwarves, fire gods, were bound by patterns. They were intermediaries, liminal beings whose power was absolute but constrained by cosmic laws. Knowledge, cleverness, and perception were the only ways humans could navigate these forces safely. Across time and culture, myth preserved these lessons, encoding strategies for survival in allegory and story. And yet, their power was not infinite. Even the most ancient beings could be undone by understanding. In every version of the Rumpelstiltskin tale, it was not brute force or gold that defeated him, but the discovery of his name, a secret that unlocked his essence and disrupted his authority. This mirrored the ancient belief that knowledge itself is a form of power, capable of bending reality, of controlling life, and of navigating realms beyond ordinary comprehension. The queen saw the significance of the patterns. Firebringers and artisans were not malevolent, nor were they benevolent. They were forces of transformation, custodians of sacred knowledge. Rumpelstiltskin's bargains, spinning, and demands were ritualized echoes of these ancient interactions. Every human who engaged with him, whether through fear, cunning, or courage, was participating in a story of cosmic significance, one that repeated across cultures and generations. As the sun rose, casting pale light over the castle, the queen contemplated the enduring nature of these myths. Rumpelstiltskin was a guide, a test, and a warning that the forces which shape the world, fire, metal, fate, and knowledge, are older than empires, older than writing, older than memory, and that humanity's survival has always depended on observing, learning, and respecting the hidden laws that govern existence. She watched her child, safe at last, and understood the depth of what had transpired. Knowledge, courage, and insight had triumphed over power, secrecy, and ancient force. And in that victory, the queen glimpsed the truth. Myths endure because they preserve the blueprint of human survival, encoded in story, song, and the turning of a simple wheel. The queen could not shake the significance of the firstborn. In every version of the tale, this was the thing most precious to the family, the ultimate offering, the currency that bridged human life and divine power. Across cultures and millennia, the firstborn has carried a unique status, a vessel of potential, a representative of life itself, and often a sacred connection to forces beyond comprehension. In the ancient world, offering a firstborn to the gods was an act of devotion and survival. Archaeological findings in Carthage and parts of the Levant suggest that children were sacrificed to deities like Moloch or Baal. These were not merely acts of cruelty, but profound gestures, acknowledging that the most valuable thing in one's possession was life itself. To give it, even symbolically, was to access the power of the divine. In the Bible, Abraham's near sacrifice of Isaac carries the same principle. The act tests faith, obedience, and understanding. It is not a story of murder, but of cosmic negotiation, the tension between human desire and divine law, between fear and trust. The queen realized that Rumpelstiltskin's demand mirrored these ancient practices. The firstborn was the offering that measured the seriousness of the bargain, the willingness of humans to engage with forces beyond their understanding. And yet, it was also a lesson in knowledge. The little man did not ask for the child randomly. His demand came with rules, patterns, and limits. By discovering his name, the queen did not steal, cheat, or force him. She observed, interpreted, and understood. The bargain was as much about intellect and perception as it was about sacrifice. Across cultures, secret knowledge, names, rituals, chants served as keys to unlock or survive interactions with powers beyond ordinary life. The queen thought of other myths, the firstborns of Egypt, protected and dedicated to gods, the eldest sons in Indo-European traditions, often bound by duty or ritual, the children in creation myths whose existence symbolized the continuity of life and order. Rumpelstiltskin's demand was an echo of this universal symbolism. The firstborn was more than flesh and blood. It was life, potential, and the tangible manifestation of continuity and cosmic balance. The queen understood the lesson deeply. Knowledge and observation, courage and insight could save what is most precious. The firstborn represents both vulnerability and hope, a test of humanity's ability to navigate the intersection of life, sacrifice, and cosmic order. To survive encounters with forces like Rumpelstiltskin, one must honor the sacred while seeking understanding, and sometimes the key is hidden in plain sight. In the quiet of the castle, as her child slept, the queen reflected on the endurance of the tale. Generations had passed down this story, preserving the warning and wisdom it contained. Life is precious, power is dangerous, and knowledge is the ultimate weapon. And sometimes, the price of survival is not strength or cunning, but perception, the courage to uncover the truth hidden in the shadows of legend. The firstborn, she realized, was never truly in danger. What was tested was the human capacity to see, to learn, and to act wisely when confronted with forces that defy understanding. Rumpelstiltskin, the spinning little man, had ensured that those who engaged with him would be changed forever, educated in the ancient, unspoken rules that govern life, death, and the balance between the mortal and the divine. The queen could not stop thinking about the moment she spoke the little man's name. Rumpelstiltskin. A simple word, yet it held unimaginable power. Across cultures, she realized, names were never just labels. They were the essence of being, the secret of existence, the key to unlocking or bending reality itself. To know a true name was to possess insight into the soul, to wield influence over life, fate, and even death. In ancient Egypt, pharaohs safeguarded secret names to protect their souls. If the hidden name was known, the pharaoh could be destroyed in the afterlife, erased from eternity itself. Names were sacred, powerful, and dangerous. In Kabbalistic traditions, the names of God were not mere words. They contained the essence of creation. To speak one aloud was to command, to transform, to access a reality beyond mortal comprehension. The queen reflected on the Testament of Solomon, where the king summoned demons with a ring engraved with a divine seal. Each demon answered only when asked its true name. Knowledge of the name granted control, insight, and the ability to bend the supernatural to one's will. Rumpelstiltskin's defeat mirrored this principle. It was not force or gold that prevailed, but understanding the ability to grasp the hidden truth and act upon it. In Indo-European myths, divine beings spoke a sacred tongue one humans could not fully comprehend. Their words were songs, chants, riddles, forms of creation, and magic intertwined. When Rumpelstiltskin danced around the fire, chanting his name, the queen's messenger overheard the incantation. It was a revelation that bridged mortal hearing and divine essence, a glimpse into the cosmic language that governed life and destiny. This was the moment she understood the universality of the tale. Across the world, myths encoded the same truth. Names hold power. Speaking them, learning them, preserving them. This was not superstition. It was recognition of a principle as old as memory itself. To know the true name of a being is to unlock the code of its essence, its purpose, and its limitations. Knowledge, carefully wielded, could bend the impossible to the human will. Rumpelstiltskin's story preserved this wisdom across centuries. Children may hear a whimsical tale of a mischievous little man, but beneath it lies an ancient lesson. That understanding is the ultimate tool, and perception is the key to survival. The little man demanded the firstborn not out of malice, but to test comprehension. His power could only be challenged with insight, courage, and discernment, the ability to discover the hidden truth behind appearances. As the queen looked upon her child, she understood that the story endured because it encoded an unspoken law. Knowledge is sacred, names are divine, and insight can conquer forces that seem impossible. Rumpelstiltskin, the spinning, chanting, dancing little man, had been defeated not by might, but by recognition. By speaking his name, she had altered reality, preserved life, and engaged directly with a principle that resonates across every culture, every myth, every generation. And in that moment, she knew the story was far more than a tale. It was a blueprint, a warning, and a guide. To understand the world, humans must pay attention, learn the sacred patterns, and respect the power that lies hidden in the names of things. The queen's thoughts drifted to the impossible task itself, the spinning of straw into gold. It was not merely a trick, not merely a test of patience or skill. Across cultures and millennia, myths encoded the idea that humans are often faced with challenges that exceed their natural capacity, tasks that seem designed to break them. These impossible trials were never arbitrary. They were the crucibles through which knowledge, courage, and ingenuity were revealed. In Greek mythology, impossible tasks abound. Heracles was set to clean the Augean stables in a single day, a feat that demanded cunning and understanding as much as strength. In other myths, kings and heroes must decipher riddles, retrieve sacred objects, or complete seemingly endless labors to prove worthiness or survival. The message is consistent. Life presents challenges that cannot be overcome by brute force alone. One must observe, reason, and perceive hidden patterns. The spinning wheel in the queen's chamber was her own Augean stable. Straw was chaos, Gold was order. The act of transformation required intervention, but the presence of the supernatural helper, the little man, encoded a deeper principle. Humans cannot navigate the impossible alone. Aid often comes in forms that are alien, enigmatic, and demanding. The bargain, the rules, and the cost were all part of a larger lesson, teaching that survival and mastery require negotiation with forces beyond ordinary comprehension. Impossible tasks also encode the value of insight over effort. The queen realized that raw labor alone could not achieve her goal. Only by listening, observing, and deciphering the hidden truth, the little man's secret name, could she claim success. Across cultures, similar patterns emerge. Wisdom is prized above brute strength. Perception over sheer endurance. These trials are as much moral and intellectual as they are practical. Even in ancient rites, humans were often tested with tasks that seemed beyond reach. Initiations, sacred ceremonies, and quests imposed challenges that symbolized death and rebirth, ignorance and enlightenment. Success depends on understanding the rules, recognizing hidden patterns, and mastering the self as much as the task. The queen understood this now. The spinning wheel, the straw, the gold, they were metaphors and mirrors, reflecting the human journey against forces both natural and supernatural. Every turn of the wheel, every glimmer of gold, encoded a lesson in perception, courage, and knowledge. The little man was not merely a villain. He was the embodiment of the challenge, the arbiter of the trial, a living symbol of the impossible made tangible. And as she looked at her sleeping child, she grasped the deeper principle. Life's impossible tasks are invitations, tests of intellect and courage, trials that demand awareness and insight. Those who navigate them successfully gain more than survival. They gain understanding, mastery, and a connection to patterns older than memory, older than kings, older than humanity itself. The spinning wheel was silent now, but its lesson endured. The impossible task was never about gold, firstborns, or fear. It was about perceiving the hidden order of the world and using knowledge to survive, to thrive, and to reclaim what seemed lost. The queen's mind returned again to the spinning wheel. She had long known it as a simple tool, a domestic instrument for thread and cloth. But now, after all she had witnessed, she understood it differently. In the stories, across civilizations and centuries, spinning was never merely work. It was creation itself, a manipulation of fate and the fabric of reality. Each thread represented life, destiny, and the unseen patterns that bind the universe together. In Greek mythology, the fates Clotho, Lachesis, and Atropos spun, measured, and cut the threads of human life. Every action, every breath, every death was woven into the tapestry of existence. Clotho drew the thread, Lachesis measured its length, and Atropos cut it at the appointed time. The spinning wheel was not just a metaphor, but a representation of cosmic order, of forces invisible yet absolute. Norse mythology mirrored this truth. The Norns sat beneath Yggdrasil, weaving the destinies of gods and men alike. Even immortals were subject to their threads, bound by patterns older than their own consciousness. To spin was to create, to measure, and to determine the path of existence. The queen realized that Rumpelstiltskin's wheel echoed this ancient symbolism. Straw transformed into gold was a reflection of fate and cosmic intervention. In the Vedic tradition, the universe itself was described as a vast golden woven tapestry. Threads of light stretched across the cosmos, connecting gods, humans, and the material world. Each fiber represented continuity, life, and divine order. Gold, in this context, was more than wealth. It was purity, divinity, and immortality. To spin straw into gold was to convert the mundane into the sacred, the ordinary into something eternal. The queen thought about her own role in this cosmic weaving. By discovering Rumpelstiltskin's name, she had not merely saved her child, she had interacted with the threads of fate itself. Knowledge and perception allowed her to intervene in a process far larger than herself, bending destiny, reshaping outcomes, and asserting human agency within a universe governed by unseen rules. Even in later alchemical traditions, the principle remained. Spinning, weaving, and transmutation were symbolic acts of transformation, not just of matter, but of the soul and of reality itself. The little man's work was a ritual, a preserved memory of ancient understanding, a bridge between human endeavor and divine influence. By negotiating his rules, she participated in an ancient, sacred process. As she watched her child sleep, the queen understood the lesson encoded in the tale. Life, fate, and destiny are threads interconnected, delicate, and powerful. Each choice, each act of perception, each insight weaves into the greater tapestry, and humans, though fragile, have the power to influence the weave, to discover hidden truths, and to act wisely when confronted with forces that surpass ordinary understanding. The wheel sat silent in the corner of the room, but its significance remained. Straw, gold, and the threads of fate were intertwined with human understanding, courage, and knowledge. The queen knew now that the spinning wheel was never just a tool. It was a lens into the cosmos, a reminder that the ordinary can become extraordinary, that life is sacred, and that understanding the threads of the universe is the ultimate power. The queen could see now that Rumpelstiltskin's power extended beyond straw and gold. His essence was fire, metal, and creation itself, a reflection of the earliest human encounters with forces that reshaped the world. Across civilizations, the mastery of fire and metal was sacred, feared, and revered. Those who commanded it were intermediaries between the ordinary and the divine, much like the little man who appeared at her castle door. In Sumeria, Kothar Wakasas crafted divine instruments and built temples, shaping tools and sacred objects for gods and kings alike. Among the Hittites, Hamili labored behind veils of smoke and flame, transforming raw materials into weapons and implements that altered the course of human life. In Norse myths, dwarves forged hammers and swords beneath mountains, their work imbued with power and intent, unseen by ordinary eyes. Across Slavic lands, Svarog, god of fire and creation, shaped civilization with his divine skill, teaching humans the sacred arts. Rumpelstiltskin embodied these archetypes. His spinning wheel, small and unassuming, mirrored the forge. Straw became gold, not through magic alone, but as a symbolic act of transformation, a ritualized echo of ancient craftsmanship. Fire and metal, straw and gold, these were all mediums through which the impossible became real, where knowledge and skill converted the ordinary into the extraordinary. The queen reflected on the significance of these figures. They were always elusive, never fully human, yet never wholly divine. They followed rules, demanded offerings, and rewarded insight. Rumpelstiltskin's bargains, his demands, and his secretive chant were echoes of the same principle. Mastery comes at a price, and the sacred cannot be approached lightly. Life, metal, and knowledge were currencies, threads in a larger tapestry connecting humans to cosmic law. In the Bronze Age, humans first learned to fuse copper and tin into a single, stronger substance. Those who mastered this skill were viewed as almost supernatural. To transform raw matter into something new was not just technical skill, it was divine mimicry, a glimpse into creation itself. Rumpelstiltskin's work preserved the memory of these firebringers, those ancient artisans whose hands shaped the future of civilization, whose knowledge was too potent to reveal casually, and whose presence could change the course of history. The queen considered the ultimate cost to the firstborn. In the ancient world, offerings were never meaningless. Children, the most precious and potent of gifts, symbolized life, continuity, and potential. Giving them, whether symbolically or ritually, was a transaction with forces greater than oneself. Rumpelstiltskin's demand, terrifying as it seemed, followed this ancient logic. Only the most precious could summon or unlock the power required to perform the impossible. And yet, the queen realized the lesson embedded in his defeat. Even beings of immense power, custodians of sacred knowledge, are bound by rules. Insight, courage, and observation can shift the balance. By discovering his name, she had accessed the hidden code of the artisan, unraveling the pattern and reclaiming agency. Knowledge had become her tool, her weapon, her salvation. Rumpelstiltskin may have disappeared, but his essence endured, threads of fire, metal, wisdom, and cosmic law woven into the story, preserved across time, waiting for the next human to perceive and act. The queen began to see Rumpelstiltskin not merely as a helper or a villain, but as a cosmic trickster, a being who exists at the boundary between mortal and divine, chaos and order. Tricksters are universal figures, appearing in myths across continents and centuries. They challenge humans, test their wits, and force them to confront truths they might otherwise ignore. In doing so, they reveal lessons about the nature of power, fate, and knowledge. In Native American traditions, Coyote is the trickster, cunning, unpredictable, and often transformative. In West African myths, Eshu plays a similar role, guiding and obstructing mortals, delivering wisdom through challenge and confusion. The Norse Loki, notorious for chaos and cunning, embodies the same archetype. Rumpelstiltskin fits this pattern perfectly. He offers help, but at a price. He grants miracles, but tests perception and courage. His demands were riddles, his bargains, lessons. The queen considered the meaning behind the little man's rules. He did not seek cruelty for its own sake. He sought understanding, observation, and respect. By enforcing impossible tasks and secret bargains, he ensured that those who succeeded had engaged deeply with the forces at play. To act without comprehension was fatal. To succeed required perception and knowledge, the ability to navigate a world where ordinary laws did not apply. This trickster archetype was a bridge. He connected mortals to the divine, humans to forces they could not fully comprehend. In Rumpelstiltskin's spinning, bargaining, and chanting, the queen saw echoes of divine law. Life, fate, and creation follow rules, and understanding those rules is necessary for survival. His presence demanded respect for patterns older than kingdoms, older than memory, older than written history. The queen also realized something darker. Tricksters are liminal. They exist in thresholds between night and day, life and death, chaos and order. They test, provoke, and disrupt, and in doing so, they teach humans the fragile balance between power and knowledge. Rumpelstiltskin's challenge was not just to spin straw into gold, but to confront the very essence of trust, observation, and comprehension. To fail was to be consumed by ignorance. To succeed was to gain insight into cosmic law. Even the little man's physicality reflected his archetype. Small, elusive, and otherworldly, he was not entirely human. His body and movements mirrored the unpredictability of fate itself, the rhythm of forces humans struggled to perceive. His voice, speaking his name in song around the fire, encoded power in syllables, another reflection of the ancient belief that language itself shapes reality. The queen understood, finally, that Rumpelstiltskin's story is more than myth. It is a map of the interaction between human perception and the forces of the universe. Tricksters endure because they embody the principle that knowledge is gained through challenge, and survival requires engagement with patterns far older than ourselves. As she watched her child safe and sound, she understood the ultimate truth. The trickster does not merely test. He educates, preserves ancient wisdom, and ensures that those who succeed are capable of understanding the delicate balance of life, fate, and power. Rumpelstiltskin may vanish, but his lesson endures an eternal echo of the cosmic dance between humans and the divine. The queen began to understand that Rumpelstiltskin's actions were ritualized, a repetition of ancient patterns encoded in myth. Every bargain, every spinning of straw into gold, every whispered chant of his name was part of a system older than kingdoms, older than writing, older than human memory itself. Myths, she realized, were not random. They preserved sacred knowledge, the blueprint of interaction between humans and forces beyond comprehension. In the ancient world, rituals governed life, death, and cosmic order. Initiates were tested, taught, and prepared through ceremonies that often seemed cruel or impossible to outsiders. The tasks were symbolic death and rebirth, ignorance and enlightenment, chaos and order. Rumpelstiltskin's impossible tasks were of the same nature. Straw spun to gold was both literal and symbolic, representing transformation, mastery, and the unlocking of hidden power. Sacred patterns were everywhere. In Vedic tradition, cosmic order was expressed through the repetition of chants, hymns, and actions performed with precise timing. In Egyptian temples, priests followed sequences of gestures, words, and offerings to invoke the gods and shape reality. Rumpelstiltskin's spinning and chanting was a miniature echo of these ancient patterns, a ritual that encoded knowledge and power in a form humans could witness and interact with. Even the structure of his story reflected ritual. 3 nights of spinning, 3 demands, and 3 chances to guess his name. The number 3 is pervasive in sacred systems past, present, and future. Birth, life, and death. Body, mind, and spirit. Each repetition emphasized the rhythm of cosmic law, the deliberate pacing that ensured lessons were absorbed and patterns respected. To fail was not simply to lose, it was to misinterpret the rules of the universe. The queen pondered the bargaining itself. In every culture, sacred power demanded offerings. Metals, fire, knowledge, and life were exchanged for access to forces beyond human reach. Rumpelstiltskin's request for the firstborn mirrored these practices. The offering was the bridge between mortal and divine, a currency for participation in the sacred ritual of transformation. It was terrifying, yes, but it also preserved balance. And yet, knowledge remained the ultimate tool. By discovering his name, the queen completed the ritual correctly. She honored the pattern, observed the rules, and intervened with insight rather than brute force. This act reflected a universal principle. Sacred power can be engaged, negotiated, and redirected, but only by those who perceive, learn, and act in accordance with the hidden laws that govern the universe. The queen realized that myths like Rumpelstiltskin endure because they encode these lessons. Every culture, from the Hittites to the Norse to the Hebrews, has stories of helpers, tricksters, and firebringers who test, teach, and transform. Their power is dangerous, their methods perplexing, but their purpose is consistent: to prepare humans to engage with forces that are larger than life, ancient, and essential. As she held her child, she understood the depth of the story. Rumpelstiltskin was never just a fairy tale figure. He was ritual, pattern, and cosmic law in miniature. A preserved memory of how humans have always sought to understand, navigate, and survive in a world ruled by forces beyond comprehension. The queen could not help but marvel at the universality of Rumpelstiltskin's story. Across time, continents, and cultures, the same archetype appeared: an enigmatic helper, a cosmic trickster, a figure who demanded a price and tested human perception. It was as if the tale had been carried on the winds of memory, whispered into the ears of countless generations, each culture adapting it, yet preserving its essence. In Africa, the Yoruba tell of Eshu, the messenger and trickster, who challenges mortals with riddles and tests. To navigate Eshu's domain requires perception, courage, and cunning, the same qualities the queen had relied upon. In the Pacific Northwest, the coyote plays a similar role, sometimes aiding, sometimes deceiving, always forcing humans to confront hidden truths. The methods differ, but the core principle endures. Survival and insight require understanding the unknown. Even in Europe, beyond the Grimm's version, stories abound of supernatural helpers demanding impossible prices. The Italian strega, or magical midwives, the Scandinavian tomte, the Slavic domovoi. These beings offered help, but always in exchange for respect, ritual, or hidden knowledge. Across Asia, tales of shape-shifting spirits, jinn, and elemental beings enforce the same rules. Patterns repeat, proving that certain truths about life, fate, and power are remembered universally. The queen considered why this archetype endures. Perhaps it is because humans have always lived at the edge of understanding, confronting forces too vast or subtle to fully grasp. The trickster, the helper, the keeper of secrets, these figures encode the principles of survival, insight, and respect for what lies beyond ordinary perception. Their stories are preserved as warnings, guides, and lessons in navigating the impossible. Names, too, remain central. In almost every version of the tale, the secret is revealed through language. Knowing the true name is key unlocking control, protection, or survival. This is no mere coincidence. Across cultures, secret names are sacred. Egyptian pharaohs, Indo-European deities, Islamic and Kabbalistic traditions all attest to the idea that words can shape reality, that names carry essence, power, and fate. To speak the true name is to intervene in the order of the cosmos. The queen understood that Rumpelstiltskin was more than a story, more than a character. He was a mirror of universal human experience, an embodiment of the trials, bargains, and transformations inherent to life itself. He represented the forces humans must negotiate: knowledge and ignorance, courage and fear, the sacred and the mortal. And yet, the story offered hope. While the challenge is daunting, humans are capable of perception, learning, and intervention. By observing patterns, listening carefully, and deciphering hidden truths, mortals can navigate the impossible. The tale endures because it is both cautionary and empowering, a reminder that survival, understanding, and mastery are intertwined with courage, insight, and respect for forces greater than ourselves. The queen, holding her child, felt the full weight of the story. Rumpelstiltskin's echo was everywhere, in every culture and myth, a testament to the timeless lesson. To face the impossible, humans must perceive, understand, and act wisely. The world is woven with patterns, and those who can read them can change destiny itself. The queen reflected on how Rumpelstiltskin, a figure steeped in ancient ritual, cosmic patterns, and mortal tests, became a story told to children. Over centuries, the dark origins of the tale were softened, the terrible bargains and sacrifices hidden beneath layers of cautionary whimsy. But the essence remained: the impossible task, the mysterious helper, the power of names all persisted as echoes of an older, more dangerous world. Fairy tales, she realized, were repositories of memory. They carried fragments of history, ritual, and belief, disguised in images and characters that could be safely told to the young. In this process, the story of Rumpelstiltskin lost the overt horror of firstborn offerings and cosmic power struggles. Yet the lesson endured. Understanding, perception, and courage were required to navigate forces beyond comprehension. The Grimm brothers collected such tales not to entertain children alone, but to preserve cultural memory. Their versions simplified dialogue, polished endings, and removed the most terrifying aspects. Rumpelstiltskin, once a potentially divine or supernatural figure demanding the ultimate offering, became a small, cunning man with a peculiar name. The spinning wheel transformed from a cosmic instrument of fate into a magical tool for gold. The story was domesticated, but its skeleton, the impossible task, the helper, the secret name, remained intact. Other cultures followed similar paths. Stories once told to convey ritual and survival wisdom became nursery tales, moral fables, or cautionary legends. The original power of the narrative, its encoding of sacred laws, cosmic patterns, and human interaction with supernatural forces, was translated into allegory. Children heard of strange names and impossible tasks, but the lessons about perception, insight, and negotiation persisted subtly under the surface. And yet, the queen knew that the original memory never fully vanished. Archaeologists, anthropologists, and folklorists have uncovered the layers beneath the surface, connecting Rumpelstiltskin to ancient metalworkers, firebringers, and divine intermediaries. Every iteration, from Bronze Age myths to Grimm's fairy tales, carries the imprint of that distant, almost incomprehensible wisdom. It is a story encoded across time, reminding us of the delicate balance between mortal agency and cosmic order. The act of speaking the name, the ultimate triumph, remains central. Even in child-friendly retellings, the notion that knowing the true name grants power persists. It is a fragment of an ancient truth. Words are not neutral. They shape reality. Names hold essence, fate, and influence. To recognize and speak the correct name is to unlock what is hidden, to bend the impossible, and to reclaim agency in a world shaped by forces beyond ordinary comprehension. The queen realized that Rumpelstiltskin's tale was never about gold, contracts, or trickery alone. It was a story of human perception, the courage to confront the unknown, and the ability to navigate the sacred patterns of existence. Even in its softened form, it retained echoes of its original power, a bridge connecting children's wonder to the vast, shadowed memory of the ancient world. And as she looked upon her child, safe and sleeping, she understood. These stories endure, not merely for entertainment, but because they carry memory, wisdom, and a call to observe, learn, and act in the face of the impossible. Rumpelstiltskin's legacy is older, darker, and far more profound than we imagine. The queen realized that Rumpelstiltskin did not vanish with the Grimm's fairy tales. His archetype lingers in modern culture, disguised in forms both subtle and overt, a shadow echoing the lessons of perception, cunning, and negotiation that have endured for millennia. From literature to film, from folklore studies to psychology, the pattern persists. Humans are drawn to figures who challenge, tempt, and reveal hidden truths. In literature, the trickster helper appears time and again. In Gothic novels, mysterious figures offer knowledge or power at a terrible price, forcing protagonists to confront morality, desire, and the unknown. In modern fantasy, characters inspired by Rumpelstiltskin test heroes with riddles, bargains, and quests. The archetype has shifted in form, but not in function. It continues to explore human interaction with forces beyond comprehension, powers that reward insight, punish ignorance, and illuminate hidden patterns. Psychology, too, has noted the enduring appeal. Tricksters, like Rumpelstiltskin, symbolize the human encounter with the unconscious, the part of the mind that tests perception, exposes fear, and rewards ingenuity. They challenge the ego, revealing hidden strengths, vulnerabilities, and the limits of ordinary understanding. To face such a figure, even symbolically, is to confront the unknown within oneself, to engage in a form of internal trial that mirrors the impossible tasks of myth. Modern media amplifies this archetype. Characters who trade favors for steep costs appear in films, video games, and even advertising. The themes are familiar: secret knowledge, moral ambiguity, and the power of names and language. The secret bargain, the hidden rule, the trial to gain insight. These elements are deeply satisfying because they echo an ancient understanding. Life rewards those who can observe, reason, and act in accordance with patterns hidden from ordinary sight. Even in daily life, the lessons endure. Negotiation, insight, and understanding complex systems mirror the archetype of the helper and the impossible task. The stories of Rumpelstiltskin are not mere fantasy. They encode principles for human survival, teaching us that perception, knowledge, and careful action can overcome challenges that seem insurmountable. The secret name, once a symbol of divine power, is now a metaphor for comprehension, knowing the hidden key that unlocks a solution. The Queen reflected on her own story. By deciphering the little man's name, she did what humans have always done when confronted with the impossible. She observed, listened, and acted wisely. Across cultures, across time, humans have repeated this pattern, from Bronze Age metalworkers to medieval kingdoms, from ancient fables to contemporary tales. Rumpelstiltskin endures because he embodies the principle that survival, mastery, and insight come not from brute force, but from understanding and perception. The tale, she realized, is not merely for children, nor merely a legend. It is a map of human cognition and culture, a guide through the impossible, and a reminder that some truths, once known, grant power far beyond the ordinary. Even now, in the modern world, Rumpelstiltskin waits in stories, in shadows, in challenges that test wit and courage, reminding us that the ancient lessons have never truly faded. The Queen contemplated the true power behind Rumpelstiltskin's bargain. It was never simply gold, nor the spinning of straw, nor even the taking of a child. It was language itself, the spoken word, the hidden name, the secret code that shapes reality. Across ancient civilizations, names were more than labels. They were the essence of being, keys to controlling forces both mortal and divine. In Egypt, pharaohs possessed secret names, inscribed only in hidden texts or tombs, designed to protect their souls in the afterlife. To speak that name without permission could erase the pharaoh from eternity. In Jewish mysticism, the names of God are similarly sacred, each syllable holding the blueprint of creation itself. In Islamic tradition, the divine names are invoked with caution, their utterance believed to influence destiny and reality. Names were believed to hold essence, power, and fate. Words could bend the world. Rumpelstiltskin's insistence on secrecy reflects this ancient belief. By demanding that the queen discover his name, he enacted a trial not of brute force, but of perception, patience, and insight. The revelation of his true name was an act of mastery, a human accessing knowledge and power once thought beyond mortal reach. To speak it was to assert agency over forces older than civilization itself. The queen saw parallels in Solomon's legendary ring. According to mystical texts, Solomon could summon and command demons simply by knowing their names. Each name contained essence and limitations. Each utterance was a key that unlocked obedience. The story of Rumpelstiltskin carries the same logic. The secret name, hidden in song and riddle, symbolizes the intersection of mortality and the divine. Knowing it allows humans to navigate forces that otherwise remain unknowable and unconquerable. Even in Indo-European traditions, divine beings spoke a language beyond human comprehension, a sacred tongue encoded in rhythms, chants, and riddles. The little man's fireside song, teasing his name, mirrors these ancient practices. It is more than a mnemonic or story device. It is a ritualized transmission of knowledge, preserved across millennia in myth. Those who fail to perceive the hidden patterns remain powerless, while those who listen, observe, and decode are rewarded. The queen understood the enduring lesson. Secrets, names, and hidden knowledge are the currency of power. Across history, the ability to observe patterns, to hear what is whispered and not said, to decipher the hidden code, has been the difference between survival and destruction, insight and ignorance. Rumpelstiltskin's bargain, terrifying though it may seem, is a crystallization of this principle. Knowledge is power, perception is life, and the spoken word can alter destiny. As she held her child close, she realized that the tale's darkness and cunning are intentional. The story preserves a memory of human engagement with forces larger than ourselves, a cautionary and empowering guide. The secret name is the ultimate test, the bridge between mortal limitation and understanding, and the enduring lesson that the queen and every human must face. To know is to control. To perceive is to survive. Rumpelstiltskin's power, she knew, resides in language itself, a principle as ancient as fire, bronze, and the cosmos, echoing through myth, memory, and time. The queen thought deeply about Rumpelstiltskin's bargain, the chilling demand for her firstborn child. At first glance, it seemed cruel, senseless, even monstrous. But she now understood it as part of a broader recurring motif in ancient culture: sacrifice as the ultimate medium for accessing power. Across millennia, humans recognized that some forces required offerings, that life itself could be a currency to engage with the sacred and the supernatural. In the ancient world, the firstborn was often the most precious, the purest, the embodiment of continuity and potential. Offering a child to the divine or supernatural was not necessarily an act of cruelty, but a recognition of something higher, a law that human hands could not shape alone. The queen remembered Abraham and Isaac, a narrative of obedience, faith, and divine testing. In Carthage and the Levant, archaeological evidence reveals that infants were placed in sacred burials, gifts to gods like Moloch or Baal. These acts were terrifying to modern eyes, yet they preserved a logic and order that humans believed aligned them with cosmic law. Rumpelstiltskin's demand mirrors these ancient practices. The firstborn was not the target of malice, but the ultimate token, a tangible symbol of what is most valuable, most vital. In offering it, humans were not merely paying a price. They were acknowledging the pattern of power, recognizing that true transformation, mastery, and creation require the highest stakes. The little man, through this ritualized demand, acted as an intermediary, testing whether mortals were capable of understanding and engaging with forces far beyond their ordinary perception. The queen realized that the story encodes a broader principle. Power and insight are never free. Knowledge, mastery, and divine favor are earned through risk, sacrifice, and attention to sacred law. Rumpelstiltskin's bargain is terrifying because it externalizes this principle in the most visceral form: a child, a life. But it is also instructional. By confronting this impossible price, humans are forced to perceive, reason, and act wisely. Survival and transformation demand engagement with the patterns that govern reality, not mere compliance or hope. Even in its softened, child-friendly versions, the narrative preserves this motif. The impossible task, the helper, and the secret name all function as symbols of negotiation with the sacred. Rumpelstiltskin's true lesson is never about punishment, but about preparation, training humans to face the unknown, to recognize what is most precious, and to act with insight and courage. The tale's tension, its fear, and its ultimate resolution are all encoded in the archetype of sacrifice and the price of accessing power. The queen held her child, understanding the weight of the story anew. The little man's bargains, once horrifying, were reflections of universal truths. Power has cost, knowledge demands engagement, and the sacred requires recognition of what is most valuable. Rumpelstiltskin endures, not because of malice, but because the lesson is eternal. Those who heed it gain insight. Those who ignore it risk destruction. In this way, the story remains alive across ages, preserving memory, wisdom, and the principle that the most profound transformations demand the ultimate commitment. Rumpelstiltskin is both warning and guide. His bargains a reminder that understanding and agency come at a price. The queen reflected on the ultimate lesson of Rumpelstiltskin's tale. Survival is never passive. The story is not merely about fear, deception, or magic. It is about human ingenuity, confronting forces beyond comprehension. The impossible task, the secret name, and the terrible bargain all serve to illuminate the spark of mortal creativity and cunning that allows humans to navigate the unknown. Fate in these tales is never random. The queen understood that the little man was not acting arbitrarily. He was a guardian of cosmic order, a trickster enforcing rules older than memory. He offered help, but it came with conditions, because the universe demands engagement. Humans must act, observe, and decipher. Only then can they survive. The queen realized that by discovering his name, she was performing the most profound act of ingenuity, a recognition of patterns, a decoding of hidden truth, a conscious intervention in fate itself. Across cultures, stories echo this principle. In Greek mythology, heroes face impossible challenges, often requiring cleverness rather than brute strength. Odysseus must navigate monsters and divine tests, relying on wit and observation to survive. In Norse myths, cunning and insight save mortals where force cannot. Even in modern tales, riddles, secret knowledge, and impossible bargains test protagonists, rewarding ingenuity and insight over blind action. The archetype persists because it mirrors the essential human experience. The unknown can be understood, mastered, and redirected, but only through perception, reasoning, and courage. The queen considered how this principle manifested in real life. Ancient metalworkers, firebringers, and ritual specialists, the true inspirations for Rumpelstiltskin, faced forces they could not control. They manipulated fire and metal, deciphered chemical transformations, and navigated sacred laws. Their success was never guaranteed, yet their ingenuity allowed them to reshape the world. The little man's spinning wheel, the secret name, and the bargain are symbolic mirrors of these ancient practices. Human survival and advancement have always relied on insight, creativity, the ability to decode patterns that others overlook. Even the act of speaking the name illustrates this principle. It was not mere luck. It was observation, interpretation, and application. The Queen's triumph demonstrates the core lesson encoded in the story. Mastery over fate is granted to those who perceive, learn, and act wisely. The impossible can be made possible, but only through intelligence, courage, and engagement with forces far older than human comprehension. Rumpelstiltskin, then, is not merely a tale of a cunning little man. He is an archetype of the universe itself, a teacher of human ingenuity, a reminder that fate is negotiable for those capable of perception and action. The story endures because it preserves this lesson. Survival and transformation demand more than hope; they require knowledge, courage, and the willingness to face the impossible. The Queen, watching her child sleep, understood fully. Every riddle, every impossible task, every secret name is an invitation. The story whispers to all who listen, across time and culture, that humanity survives not by chance, but by observing, decoding, and mastering the patterns that govern the world. The Queen held her child close, reflecting on the journey the story had taken from a poor miller's daughter to a timeless archetype echoing through 4,000 years of human memory. Rumpelstiltskin, the little man with a strange name, was never just a fairy tale. He was a symbol, a vessel carrying lessons about perception, ingenuity, and the sacred patterns that shape human life. His spinning wheel, his bargains, and his secret name were all conduits of a deeper truth, that knowledge and survival demand engagement with the unknown. Across civilizations, the archetype persists. From the firebringers and metalworkers of the Bronze Age to the tricksters, helpers, and secretive spirits in myths worldwide, the same patterns repeat. These figures challenge mortals, offering aid at a price, testing, understanding, courage, and wisdom. The Queen realized that myths are not idle fantasies. They are living archives, encoding the principles humans have used to navigate the impossible, preserve life, and harness power beyond ordinary comprehension. Even the softened versions told to children preserve the core lesson. The impossible task, the mysterious helper, and the secret name remain central. Children may see it as a simple story about gold and trickery, but the skeleton of the tale is far older and far darker. It reminds us that life often presents impossible challenges, and that insight, observation, and ingenuity are the keys to overcoming them. The little man's demand for the firstborn, terrifying though it seems, reflects the ancient understanding that the most precious offerings are required for true transformation. Every mythic bargain, every ritual, every sacred name carries this principle. The universe rewards those who respect its hidden laws, who perceive the patterns others overlook, and who act with courage and intelligence. Rumpelstiltskin's power lies not in malice, but in teaching, testing, and preserving this ancient wisdom. The Queen reflected on the final triumph, knowing his name. By speaking it aloud, she reclaimed agency, intervened in fate, and broke the pattern that threatened her child. Names, words, and knowledge are the tools through which humans engage with forces beyond their ordinary reach. This act, repeated in countless cultures and stories of tricksters, demons, and divine intermediaries, demonstrates an enduring truth. Understanding is the ultimate power, and so Rumpelstiltskin endures, not just in fairy tales or bedtime stories, but in the very structure of human thought, myth, and culture. He is a reflection of the delicate balance between mortal limitation and the vast unknown, a memory of how humans have always navigated impossible tasks, sacred bargains, and cosmic patterns. The little man's legacy is a whisper across time, urging perception, courage, and wisdom. As the Queen watched her child sleep peacefully, she understood. Myths like Rumpelstiltskin are more than stories. They are keys to ancient truths, echoes of human ingenuity, and the enduring reminder that even in the face of the impossible, knowledge, observation, and courage can bend fate itself. The story ends here, but its lessons continue, hidden in myths, whispered in fairy tales, and waiting for those willing to see the patterns behind the impossible. Rumpelstiltskin is gone, But the knowledge he guarded lives on, in every riddle solved, every name spoken, and every human who dares to confront the unknown.